Hey, hello, what's up, and welcome into this week's episode of the Geek Garage Podcast. This is episode number, none of this matters. I am Ted, joined as always by show founder David. Say hello, David.
Hello, Ted.
We
How are you?
finally, God damn it, we almost had it. So close.
What? So I can say hello, Ted, and not ask how I'm not allowed to ask how you're doing?
No. Moving right along. We'll get that right eventually, I promise. This week's episode finds us dissecting the first trailer for Godzilla vs. Kong. I don't think that it's an understatement to say that this is the most excited I've been about a movie since ever.
The beginning of the year?
Since the beginning of the year. Yeah.
Which has been like a whopping 26 days now.
3.5 weeks, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it before. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I'm a huge King Kong fan. I love monster movies and giant creature features. So this is basically somebody scooped out 10-year-old Ted's brain and was like, let's make a movie out of it. Probably less boobs, though, but, you can't win them all.
No. Until they decide to pop that cherry and finally make like an R-rated monster movie with Godzilla and Kong and tits, get that trifecta in there.
Yeah.
That's
the dream that I keep alive in
the monster hat trick, as it were.
Indeed, sir.
One of these days.
Well, got to keep hope alive, David. But all jokes about memories aside, I am very excited. David's very excited. This episode will be kind of broken down into two parts. The first, I'm going to say half, but it probably won't actually be half of the episode. Just the first section of the episode will be spoiler free and speculation free. It'll just be talking about how excited we are for the trailer and what was in the trailer. And then the second portion will be some speculation and some potential spoilers. So we'll put a mark in so you know when to turn it off if you don't want to hear us ramble on about things that might ruin the movie for you.
Right. And I guess spoilers for previous movies as well, like King Kong, the Dawn of Justice. That's not it.
Nope.
That's Skull Island.
Yeah, and Skull Island and the previous two Godzilla movies, Godzilla and then King of the Monsters. So if you haven't seen any of those, number one, what are you doing with your life? Go watch those immediately because they're amazing and terrible in equal measures. And kind of like the podcast, actually. We got that going for us. But spoilers for those three movies, as well as some of the general mythos and lore surrounding either character. And then the second half of the episode or thereabout will be very spoiler heavy. So I think that's all we got to start. David, what do you say?
Let's get this shit show on the road.
Yeah, play that funky music.
All right. Boop.
All right, so David, I think it's safe to say that this is going to be a shorter episode since it's about a 3-minute long movie trailer.
Yeah, this episode will be the appropriate length for what we're discussing, which is a trailer. So, I mean, the episode probably won't be 3 minutes, but it won't be our typical 60 to 90 minute, average duration.
Right. So, it's a quickie, if you will.
Right. Yeah. But hey, we promise you one episode a week, and here we are delivering. So, you are welcome.
Deal with it, peasants. Basically, this will just be our thoughts, feelings, and predictions regarding the film, which is due out March 31st in the U.S. On both HBO Max and in theaters simultaneously. For those of you that have theaters open around you,
me.
Yeah. I suppose technically I have theaters open around me, but they're not within what I would consider around me distance.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Opry Mills Theater is basically in your backyard.
Yeah. And that's a nice one. I like the Hollywood 27. That's probably my favorite just because nobody goes there.
Precisely. That was it wasn't quite equidistant from our two places, but it wasn't, on the other hand, it wasn't a far drive. So, and like you said, it's a nice theater. It's a good one to, go to if you are enjoyer of like indie flicks as well, because it's a good one that
Yeah, with
plays like
all those screens, they got to fill it up with something.
right. Um, yeah, and plus I think over the years it pretty much to the point where the whole like all 27 theaters are now redone.
Yeah,
Um,
it's actually it used to be kind of gross and run down, but it's
oh
been
yeah,
revitalized some. Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty dope.
Yeah, from the bunches of times that we went there when we started going to the movies together, I don't think I can't remember a time where we sat in those like gross like turquoise and purple
Yeah, the old
seats.
school ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you not from the Nashville area, you don't have any fucking clue what we're talking about. But imagine your local theater that would at one point, about a week after opening, was the best place in town, and then about a
Mm,
week and a half after opening was like a rundown shithole. Uh, and
right.
that is the theater we're discussing. But in the last few years, they have kind of gotten it together and revitalized it some. It's very nice. I miss it a lot. That's my home away from home, as it were.
Hmm.
But with Corona, I get it. I'm not trying to push and be like, open everything. Corona's fake. I'm not that guy. But I still, like,
Yeah.
it's natural to miss things you enjoy when you can see,
Yeah.
right? So,
I think the people listening can empathize.
yeah. I mean, I know there's a lot of our listeners are big into like the con scene and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So, I mean, that's not a one-to-one necessarily, but they kind of get where we're coming from. Or like if
For
they're
sure.
if they're used to going and playing like tabletop games in a group, like unless you have a really tight knit group that you know where everybody's been, so to speak, it's kind of difficult
Right.
and stuff like that. So anyway, now that we've got that weird little nostalgia tangent out of the way, it'll also be on HBO Max, which is the streaming service that like 5 people have. It's the only one that is there's only one streaming service worse, and that's Peacock. In terms of I think subscriber numbers. I'm just pulling those numbers out of thin air. That's all bullshit. But seriously, does anybody have HBO Max? Honest to God.
I do, and I use it all the time.
Well, there's one.
No,
I actually have nothing against it. I've become anti-streaming service because it was supposed to defeat cable, and now it's
yeah,
becoming cable.
yeah. Now it's what you call cable 2.0, right?
Yeah, I cut all the cords for a reason. I don't want to have the same basic. This is way off track. Godzilla wouldn't be fucking with cords. Uh,
No,
anyway,
I mean the only reason why I have HBO for the most part is because it is given to me for free, quote unquote, for free through my I guess it's my internet, so through AT&T, because I elected for a like the fastest speeds possible because of work and stuff, since I'm working from home. Need those fast speeds because the VPN slows that shit down. But yeah, they were like, here's HBO Max for free. And I was like, I'm not complaining. It's one less streaming service that I have to pay for out of pocket. So
yeah, my internet service provider is like, you got a modem and it works some of the time. That's what you get, motherfucker. And because I don't want to get sued, I won't name them, but they own everything, and their name starts with the letter after A and B. So you can figure it out from there.
mm-hmm.
Let's get this shit show on the road as we were supposed to like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, fuck it.
Initial thoughts, David. What are yours?
So
Let me stop you right there. You're not excited enough for one thing. I'll tell you that.
no, I like seriously, I'm super excited. Between the trailer being released, a few days ago, what was it, Sunday?
Yeah, it's Sunday around like noon, our time.
Yeah. So between Sunday and now, that we're recording, and that's Tuesday evening, I've watched it approximately 6 or 7 times, and yeah, I mean, I get more and more excited for it every time I watch it, and I think my favorite part is when Kong's like yelling at the water, like, show yourself. And Godzilla's like, fuck you, bitch.
Yeah.
Just uppercuts.
Kong's like, get over here. And Godzilla's like, bet.
All right.
Yeah.
Coming at your boy.
Yeah. It's hype is the word for it, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm overall like I'm super excited. You know, just to get this out of the way. One of the negative things, just put it out there so we can deal with it. I think the person or people that elected to have the backing track of like the who's gonna get you, like
Here we go.
yeah, like they should be executed via firing squad.
Yeah, they should be lined up on the wall immediately, straight to the firing squad.
Like it, the movie speaks for itself. Like, put in the ambient music like usual. That's fine. That's what we're used to. Okay. But like, you don't need this like amped up, like UFC style bullshit. Like, we get it. Like,
Like
it's too
UFC
monster.
light. Like the actual UFC would be like whack, no.
Right.
It's that music was bad. I was like, oh no, baby, what is you doing?
What is you doing?
It was not good, but yeah, I mean, I had some problems with the trailer. I'll be honest. As excited as I am, as much as as much hype as I have for it, I did have some problems with it. Other
Mhm.
than the music, um, I still feel like the people who wrote it have never heard two people have an actual conversation before.
Yeah, that is. I feel like that is also accurate. I
Yeah,
also feel like the trailer may have shown a little too much for a first trailer. Maybe that's just me.
I agree, but I want to touch on that later because we did promise them part of the episode where we wouldn't spoil
Sure.
potential things. So
Right.
I do
Right.
agree with that. We'll put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Um, I also think that and it's tough to say this judging from what a 2 or 3 minute trailer, but it seems like the movie's going to try and do too much. One of the problems I had with both Skull Island, to a lesser extent Skull Island, but King of the Monsters especially, even though I enjoyed both of those movies, is like I felt like they tried to throw too much at you to establish that like, oh, this is a cinematic universe, so to speak.
Hmm.
You know, I'm not big on the Marvel films, but one thing I think they do well is they don't just dump everything on you at once. Like there's what 23 of those movies so far, and
Right.
they're not all created equal in terms of like how good they are, but I think that each one of them does a decent job of being a self-contained story, excuse me, while also giving you glimpses of how they connect to the other films.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that too many people meaning executives in Hollywood are seeing that success and being like, "Oh, we need a shared universe." And while I think that, a monsterverse like this, I'm into that. I could, like I said, I love these kind of movies. I'm worried that like this is now going to be the fourth film and they're just like they keep just throwing all this shit at you.
Hmm.
And that's kind of my one thing from the trailer. Now again, I could be wrong and it could just be the way that the trailer's cut and set up and edited to where they're just giving you information but it's not necessarily about the overarching story. But you get the bits where they're talking like, oh, the myths are true, the legends are true, there was a war and this and that, like they're building up something more, and I'm just like, guys, we don't need a lot. Okay, we have two giant monsters, let them fucking fight for 90 minutes and then let me piss off out of the theater. That's all I want out of life.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that. I mean, it's it can be complicated, that world building and universe building that these franchises do nowadays. Um, but I don't know. I feel like the with the monster movies, it can be simple enough. Whether or not they actually take that into consideration is a whole different thing, right?
Yeah,
But like you said, they can build this quote unquote universe where we have Godzilla. He has his own separate movies. We have King Kong, who has his own separate movies. Every once in a while, they join up in one movie, and then part ways and whatever. That can be a thing. It's just how complicated do you want to make it?
yeah. In King of the Monsters they named, I mean, there were what, uh four main kaiju in that film: Godzilla, Ghidorah, Rodan, and Mothra, right?
Right, but there
That's
was like 17 total.
that's what I was gonna say. But then they were like, oh, but there's like however many. It was like 12 or 15 or something. It was a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I just rewatched it today. I think the total number was 17.
okay,
Yeah,
I haven't seen it in a while, so you may be right. And it's like, okay, some of those are probably like quote unquote classic kaiju, but like not all of them. Some of them you have to be pulling out of thin air or creating, which is not bad necessarily, right? Like again, I love these kind of movies. I am down for more of these kind of movies.
hmm
But like you know, I don't know that you necessarily need to have them as part of this already established Godzilla slash King Kong universe. Like, you know, there have been other successful kaiju movies or kaiju like movies like Cloverfield, which I really liked. It's not perfect, but it
Mhm.
scratched that itch of like, there's a giant monster fucking up New York. Woo! You know,
Nah,
or
I was one of the few in my friend circle that actually liked Cloverfield as well. Like it, that came out fairly, within the realm or the time period that found footage movies were like really ramping up. Like it was
right.
still several years after like the Blair Witch Project, but like found footage movies were like starting to gain traction as like part of the mainstream. And
It
but
wasn't
like
like the thing quite yet, right?
right, so like people were going to the theater to go see it, and they're like they had to step out or they left with like motion sickness, like they were actually nauseous. And I was like I get nauseous pretty easily, and I didn't have a problem with it. So I'm like, I maybe y'all are just a bunch of bitches. Maybe I
Maybe you're
don't
soft. Yeah,
know.
I
You
don't know. I
saw,
mean, like, I kind of I have a little sympathy for like the motion sickness or that
sure.
aspect of it, but like, I feel like people tried to make that movie something it wasn't, or
Hmm.
tried to judge it in a way that I don't think was fair. And like, you know me, I'm a hypercritical asshole,
Hmm.
but I also am accepting of a lot of things. Like, we were talking about this about Godzilla movies. I think this may have came up on the podcast we did with Mac where we talked about Godzilla films, but it's like, to love Godzilla movies is to be very forgiving
Hmm.
because a lot of them make no fucking sense whatsoever. And I'm fine with that because, like I said, I get 90 minutes of a dude in a rubber suit going raw and kicking over fake buildings, which is all I've ever really wanted out of life. You know, so um,
I mean, strange request, but I mean, an
we don't
easy
kink
one to
shame here, David.
fulfill. Hey, it's an easy one to fulfill.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to get a dude in a rubber suit, kicking over buildings.
You sound like you know there's some experience, but we don't kink shame, like I said. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, I'm very, very excited for it. Very, very excited for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you have any parts of the trailer that I guess like kind of piqued your interest the most, or that you were the most excited or hyped for, or about?
uh, s- upon the first like two viewings, I was just kind of like enamored by like the whole thing in general, like just the idea that it was actually coming to fruition finally.
Right.
And it felt like it was a kind of a long time in the making, but at the same time it kind of crept up on us, and it was like,
Right.
here we are.
I think
Because
part of that's because of how weird 2020 was.
right, yeah, like
So
I mean, was this one of the movies that should have been released sooner but got pushed back, or
this one got,
do
I'm
you
pretty
know?
sure this one got delayed if I remember correctly, but I don't know that it was COVID related. It could have just been like they're, finishing the movie. Post-production for a film like this with all the, computer graphics takes a long time to do right. So
Right.
it could have been that. I could be wrong. It may not have been delayed. If only we'd done the bare minimum of research, but that's not where you listen to us. So
Well, like we said, we're just talking about the trailer. We didn't promise, an abundance of research.
yeah,
But one of the reasons why I asked is because the Godzilla King of the Monsters only came out in the summer of 2019, and
right.
then Kong Skull Island was just 2 years before that. So
Yeah,
like they're doing a really good job on the release schedule, like kind of keeping it both consistent and not super far or super long period of time in between the movies, but
right.
also not like here's 6 months of breathing time before you get the next kaiju punch you in the face fucking movie.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that because it's a timeline that kind of keeps it fresh. Like you're like, oh yeah, it seems like I just saw that movie not long ago.
Hmm.
But also it's not like overkill like when they try to do a Star Wars movie every Christmas for like 5 years straight, and people were like, shut the fuck up forever.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And not to pick on Star Wars specifically because of Star Wars, just that was the first release schedule that popped into my mind that was like that.
Right. No. So was there a moment from the trailer that kind of popped up at you that was like where you were like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple really cool moments in the trailer. We talked about where Kong is like roaring into the sea, and then Godzilla like surfaces and shoots out of the water, which that was dope.
Hmm.
This is kind of it's not as action y as that, but when you first hear that Godzilla, that classic Godzilla roar, that gets me
Right.
every time.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
like they I was I was listening to or watching the movie and listening to it on my headphones earlier, and I was actually thinking about it. It's funny you mentioned, his roar. Like I really think that they've done a good job with the last couple of Godzilla movies with his roar. Like it sounds great.
yeah, and I like that they didn't really change it a lot. Like it's not a dramatic change from that classic sort of
Right.
Showa era Godzilla roar, like the classic 50s Godzilla roar. But it's also it keeps with that faith, so to speak, but it seems a bit more menacing, and I think a lot of that is just because like audio technology in 2020 is a lot better than it was in 1954.
Sure.
But I think it's a great homage,
Yeah.
in keeping with that tradition. I think that's very cool. As far as an actiony part, um, the last clip that you see before the trailer kind of cuts to black, where Kong is leaping across and Godzilla's shooting the fire or the atomic breath at him. I was like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah, man. Yeah. I and like the neon lights of Tokyo, I was like, "Oh, hell yeah."
I think that's Hong Kong actually, but yeah, I mean, point taken.
Right, yeah. It's not in the US
We
wherever
don't
it
have things
is.
like that here.
No, we don't have cool landscapes with neon lights where, if Nicholas Winning Refn walked in, he'd just be like, "Ah," like cream his shorts and
Immediately cream, immediately.
right, and just die from
Yeah,
exhaustion.
we don't have that, but
Yeah.
win some, lose some.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I said it earlier. We've talked about this ourselves as well. Like to know Godzilla, to love Godzilla is to be very forgiving. So, as much as I liked King of the Monsters, I equally hated a lot of parts of King of the Monsters because I think that was the first movie I ever watched where I actively rooted for every human person to die.
You're not the only one.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, Tom Hiddleston can live, Brie Larson can live because she's my BFF forever. And yeah, thankfully I got my wish. Everyone else, like Sam Jackson, he kind of played like that um, rare role where
mm,
he's kind of a dick where but he doesn't show his dickish colors right away.
right.
He kind of comes off as a dick as the movie unfolds. But yeah, just a lot of people die in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw Skull Island on opening night in IMAX, because of
Oh
course I
man, I
did.
bet that was
And it
dope.
was dope. It was very dope. Still has one of my probably top 10 line readings of all time where they first see Kong and nobody says shit, and the one redneck guy's like, "Is that a monkey?"
Dude, I text like
Yeah,
so, okay, so if you follow us on social media or you're a part of the Facebook group page, I just you probably saw my post the other day where I was like, I can't believe I sat on this movie for so long because yes, I did just see Kong Skull Island for the first time. I think this past weekend, and that's because they added it to HBO Max. Makes sense because um, the movie is coming to HBO. Anyways, yeah, I just that line fucking floored me. I was like, "Is that a monkey?" I
it's
texted
so
you. I texted you immediately,
yeah,
and you were like, "Dude, best line ever."
yeah. That one got a hearty chuckle out of me in the theater, and I went with another friend of mine, and we both got a kick out of it. But I think a lot of people didn't see the humor in it. I'm like, you're watching a movie about a giant gorilla. You know,
Like, how can you
how can
not
you
see
not
the
fucking laugh at that?
right? Like, uh, I mean, all those people in helicopters are about to die. So here's some levity.
Right, I was gonna say here's some much needed levity. Exactly.
Yeah. but that was like that scene was dope. Like
Mhm.
them like just dropping the bombs, or not. I mean, I forget what they called them, but they were. They said they were one thing and they ended up being something else, whatever they were, and then Kong shows up and just like fucking punches one of um, the helicopters, and just chaos ensues.
Yeah.
So that whole sequence was absolutely beautiful. I was like, holy like I totally underestimated the movie. I remember the movie coming out and people are actually like, I looked at it, I was like, maybe I'll wait till DVD. But everyone was like, dude, you need to see this movie. I was like, okay. And so my dumb ass sat on it for like 3 fucking years. Um, so yeah, I'm glad I finally got to see it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
You mentioned that that scene looked really good, and that's something else I noticed about the trailer for this is I liked a lot of the cinematography and sequencing in King of the Monsters, but
Hmm.
a very real complaint that I think is a very fair complaint is that it all takes place at night with a bunch of smoke and shit around it.
Sure.
So it's kind of like masking some of the effects, which we've talked about practical effects versus computer generated effects and where we stand on those, but for these types of movies, like, CG really works well, I think. um
Yeah.
and I'm excited that a lot of this movie seems, at least what they showed in the trailer, seems to take place during the day or is well lit,
Hmm.
which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, you a lot of Kong Skull Island took place during the day, and so they were pretty bold to flex their CG muscles with that, with the day scenes. So yeah, I'm definitely with you, hoping that we get more day scenes, just because that's I feel like that's more in tune with the Kong movies.
Mhm.
You get a little bit more daylight, um, whereas Godzilla, most of the stuff happens at night, like you said. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what excites us about the trailer, and I personally would like to get into some speculative stuff that maybe some of our listeners don't want to hear because um, they want to go in fresh, and this may potentially ruin it for them. So if you don't want to hear us speculate or super nerd me go into details that I picked up in the trailer, that might be potential spoilers,
Yeah.
maybe turn the episode off now, or
Right.
at least fast forward a few minutes until we get to shit that doesn't suck, and then turn the episode off because it's over.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah,
And like you said, Ted, uh, what we said is not the gold standard. It's not correct. We don't have any insider info. We're not that cool
right.
yet.
Yeah,
Um,
these are not actual spoilers. Like, I don't have a copy of the script or anything, but
but you do know your way around a monster movie, and
I may have seen a few of them. Yes,
you've seen a billion of them, literally, and so you can read between the lines a lot better than your layman coming into this monster movie regalia. So
sure. I don't know that that's true, but thank you for the nice ish thing you said about me. You basically
you're
called me a turbo nerd in a nice way, but whatever, that's cool.
I mean, you're welcome. I love you,
It's
buddy.
not wrong, but anyway. So the first thing I noticed is right near the top of the trailer. Within the first, I think, 3 to 4 seconds of the trailer, I'm pretty sure you see Mechagodzilla.
Are you talking about the stair scene where people are
Yeah,
running down the
there's
stairs?
everybody running down into what I would presume is a subway of some kind,
Hmm.
and over them for a split second, it's only a couple of frames, you can see what appears to be Mechagodzilla's head, as well as some, it's like, really what you see is just kind of like red, which looks kind of like fire up in the sky, which I think that's Mechagodzilla's head, and then some of the lights and fire around his mouth and throat. But
Yeah.
I've watched the trailer several times, and I've seen some still shots from that, and I would just about bet the house that that's Mechagodzilla.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you there. Like I went back and rewatched it after you said that, and I kind of paused it in a couple different places and looked at some still shots on the interwebs, and yeah, like it kind of looks like Godzilla, but it also looks like a new and improved mechanical version of Godzilla.
Yeah. So what I think, and I'm not the only one that thinks this, a lot of people I've seen on the internet are speculating something very similar to me, is that this whole fight between Godzilla and Kong is actually Mechagodzilla and Kong, and then the real Godzilla shows up.
Mm.
Because there's a lot of hints in the trailer that say like Godzilla's attacking people who we don't know, and we don't know why. First, probably because you shoot rockets at him. Number one, that would piss me off if I were a giant, atomic breath having lizard. But it also could be some misdirection, so to speak, wherein that is actually Mechagodzilla attacking them. Now we saw at the end of King of the Monsters, if you've seen King of the Monsters, that they have one of the Ghidorah heads. The eco terrorist group has, I think it was the eco terrorist group that picked that up, had one of the Ghidorah heads.
Hmm.
Now in the quote unquote traditional or historical Godzilla timeline, um, Mechagodzilla, I don't think is from that. I'm pretty confident that there's like a Mecha Ghidorah. I don't think that's what the creature is called, but that's essentially like what it is. Um, so some people are speculating that maybe that Mechagodzilla is powered by Ghidorah's brain, so it's like a cyborg somewhat,
Hmm.
which would be interesting. But I don't know. Can't it just be Mechagodzilla, man? We gotta, we don't have to do all this new shit,
Yeah. No, I've seen a lot of talks about this Apex company. I don't know if that dude from Game of Thrones, that he was in King of the Monsters.
Mhm.
Um, that kind of, I mean, his role, like, I was, I said I watched it, rewatched it today, and I didn't realize, or I guess I remembered how throwaway his character was. Like he's in like two or three scenes, and I'm like, his role was like kind of wasted for
Yeah.
such like a great actor. Um, but yeah, I don't know if he is officially part of this Apex company, but a lot of the speculation that I've been reading up on and seeing in some other YouTube videos and stuff for people that have done that know a lot more than me seem to think it's a possibility that this Apex company is behind this Mecha Godzilla, if that is in fact the case. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Um, excuse me. I think that that's probably a fair assessment. And the reason I think that it's probably a fair assessment is because if you look at their motivations in the first film, like I said, they're an eco terrorist group, right?
Hmm.
It makes sense in an eco terrorist kind of way that they would want to attack and destroy, humanity in part at least. So I think that there's probably a good chance that that's got some accuracy to it. The other thing that I think is, like I said, I think that it's going to end up being Godzilla and Kong versus this potential mecha creature as the big finale, which I'm not against. Like, give me more monsters fighting more monsters. I'm fully on board with that.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious if they're gonna go just like full Planet of the Apes with this shit and like get to the point where San Francisco becomes kind of like what you saw in the movie where like they did that generation over time where like uh a city becomes overrun with like animals and other wildlife and
Yeah.
grass grows over buildings, and so what once was a bustling city of people is now just like a landscape um for wildlife and
Mhm.
creatures of all sizes.
Well, for San Francisco, it would be an improvement, but
Uh, at this point in time, yes, you
yeah,
are 100% correct.
yeah,
I mean, I've heard like, I mean, it was bad before the pandemic, but I've heard it's like fucking terrible
yeah.
right now.
I'm
Like,
sure. Yeah,
um, I mean, with like the homelessness and shit. I don't want to turn this into a political thing, but yeah, I've heard that it is not great, not a
yeah.
great
Need
situation.
people need some help over there. We'll
Mm,
leave it at that.
yeah.
Um, We talked about earlier the final shot of the trailer with King Kong leaping at Godzilla with the what appears to be an axe.
Hmm.
Um,
That's something that I did not pick up on my like first two viewings. I don't know why,
mhm.
because a giant monkey swinging a giant axe is something that like tends to stand out. But like in my defense, not that I deserve much, but in my defense, there is a lot of stuff going on in the trailer.
Right.
Lots of flashing lights, lots of motion.
I
Big
mean,
monsters.
you're so excited to see it, it's easy to miss things. I
Right.
get it.
But
Um,
yeah, he apparently he does have an axe of some sort. And Ted, do you have a theory about where this axe comes from?
kind of. So if you look at the axe, it looks a lot like one of Godzilla's dorsal spikes or
Hmm.
fins or what have you. And they mentioned in the trailer, oh, there was a war. These are the last two standing. So I correct me if I'm wrong, David, because the movie's going to be fresher in your mind having watched it more recently. But isn't there a lot of hinting in Kong Skull Island that that's some sort of hollow Earth that or hollow portion of Earth that he kind of goes into and is his lair?
Yeah, there is some hinting in there about like a hollow earth. And
Right,
there's like something that happens where John Goodman's character like says with like this big shit-eating grin, like I knew it, like the hollow earth thing is real or something like that.
right.
And then he gets stomped on or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah, poor bastard. Rest in
Yeah.
peace, John Goodman's character. You was a real one.
He's a real boy.
um, so what I'm thinking is that that's probably not one of this Godzilla's dorsal fins. I could be wrong, but I think that's probably a relic of some of the past Kong civilization because I think this is pretty well hinted at that he's the last of his kind,
Hmm.
and that's one of the reasons he's able to grow so large is because the ecosystem isn't supporting X number of Kongs. It's just him. Plus, he's probably juicing, but that's neither here nor there. Uh,
Yeah, I also heard an argument that it fell off in a previous fight in the movie.
that's
So like
possible. Yeah,
they have a fight early on, maybe in Act One, and then it falls off in some form or fashion.
maybe the carrier fight.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I could buy that.
yeah, but it's also possible that it's a fin that belongs to Mechagodzilla. And Mechagodzilla maybe at this stage looks exactly like regular Godzilla. So they.
That's something that some people brought up is that it could be a synthetic skin over the Mechagodzilla core,
Mm,
and I think that was done in a previous movie. But you know, some of these movies I haven't seen for 20 something years, and I've
mhm.
had a lot of times in the time in between, so I'm not 100% on them. Uh, you know, I'm ruining my own bona fides, but so it goes.
It's okay. The When I was perusing through HBO and to see what else they added as far as like monster movies, they also added the original Godzilla from what was it, 54 or something like that. Um, and then they added the Megalodon one.
Yeah,
I was like, well, if that isn't a dude in a suit, like it looked exactly like Power Rangers. I was like, hey, that looks like Power Rangers, except it's a Godzilla movie. Good times.
like I said, I know that there was a pretty big rumored leak that happened, and I tried to avoid that because I don't want to ruin the movie for myself. I mean,
Hmm.
I think there's a difference in being eagle eyed, quote unquote, and seeing things just because you are aware of some of the mythos versus having somebody that was like, hey, I worked at Legendary Pictures or what have you, and this is what's going to happen, suckers. You know,
Right.
because I I personally try not to spoil things for people if it's something they want to see. Now, if they're like, "Hey, tell me what happens," then by all means, if they ask me to. But like, I don't want to just be the dick guy who's just like, "Oh, this is
Sure.
what's going to happen this season," because that sucks. I don't want to ruin things. I don't want to ruin people's fun unnecessarily. So
Yeah, I mean, spoilers. It's such a weird one because like it can be kind of a gray landscape, anyways. Like to figure out what is spoilers and what isn't, and like spoilers, it seems like such a small thing, But Ten, you and I were talking about this the other day. I think like life is all it is just made up of a bunch of like small things,
Yeah.
and and spoilers just happen to be one of them. So it's one of those small things that turns out to be a big thing.
Yeah, it could be a small thing for you or I, or John or Jane Doe, and then for somebody else, that could be the one thing that they're looking forward to, that they derive a significant portion of their happiness from. I don't want to ruin that for anybody, because that's shitty. Unless it's something really terrible, in which case you have bad taste and should feel bad. But that's not here nor there.
Right. Like that fucking jerk off in that Star Wars Facebook group that spoiled the season finale of Mandalorian for me like
Like,
7 a.m.
yeah, I was gonna say, like,
the day it
four and
came.
a half hours after the episode dropped.
Yeah, he was,
Okay,
called him an
so
ass.
basically my feelings, and this is the last thing about spoilers, but like, if you go to a designated place or designated forum or what have you, where people are like, hey, we can post spoilers here, nobody cares, post to your heart's content. But I look at it the same way I look at, like, to be dramatic, like a loaded weapon. I treat every weapon as if it's loaded, because I
Mm,
don't know unless I check it, right?
right.
And I try and treat spoilers in a much less dramatic way, the same, where I don't know if the person I'm talking to wants it to be spoiled, if they've seen it. Like on the podcast, we go and we're like, hey, we're going to get into spoilers. This episode's a perfect example. Some of this stuff might end up being true, might be a spoiler to some people. If you don't want to hear it, no harm, no foul. Just turn the podcast off.
Hmm.
If you don't care, or maybe you want to see what our opinions are or whatever about what could potentially be spoilers, hang out. You know what I mean? It should be up to the individual, but don't just go and be a douchebag and spoil shit for people just to do it, you fucking troll dickheads.
Right. And I mean, doing it in some like spoiler okay subreddit, like that's one thing where you have to go like seek it out. But like scrolling through your Facebook feed first thing in the morning is kind of like reading the newspaper for our generation.
In a
Like it's
way, yeah.
I mean, it's also apples and oranges, but at the same time, like, we don't have the newspaper, like, and Facebook to a lot of us is how we keep up with, our friends and family
And
all at
fake
the
news.
same time. Right. And so it's kind of like a staple for a lot of people, one of the first things they do in the morning, maybe while they're enjoying breakfast or coffee or whatever. So, you be like, oh, like so and so, like they had their baby last week and they're home from the hospital, and Joe Blow, he watched some porn and had a good time over there, and oh look, like the ending of the Mandalorian was just spoiled for me.
And it's always in all caps. Nobody's like chill about it when they're discussing the last episode of something. They're always like, OMFG, 15 exclamation points, can't believe so and so did such and such. Crazy, wild, LOL, like and subscribe. Nobody's ever just like, that shit was wild, bro. Like, nobody's ever subtle about shit anymore.
Right, yeah, subtlety has kind of gone out the window.
Yeah, like
um,
irony, it's a dead scene. Um,
yeah, it's just all caps all
yeah,
day long.
I don't know.
Oh,
This episode's weird, man. I don't know. Um,
yeah,
but
we've covered a lot
yeah,
for a trailer
it's
episode.
3 minutes long. Yeah. Um,
Right.
that's kind of all I had to talk about with the trailer. I mean, it's a trailer. Go watch it if you haven't yet. It's dope. Do you want to do shit that doesn't suck?
Yeah. So I'm gonna do two. So, uh, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, and I'm talking about the originals. I think they were released
1968,
1968 and
1977, I
78.
believe.
Yeah, they were pretty close to 10 years apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was my first time watching both of them. I had seen the Zack Snyder directed the remake, right?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
'04.
So I saw the remake first several years ago, and so like I said, this was my first time seeing both of them, and we did talk a little. I mean, actually, quite a bit about those movies in the zombie episode, which we have already pre-recorded at this point. But yeah, those movies are awesome. Like zombies, they're typically not my like horror monster, antagonist of choice, but those movies are great, and I think they hold up. I think they still have a lot to say, um, culturally, and what they were trying to say at the time. So yeah, um, I thoroughly enjoy them. So yep.
Right on. Yeah, those are both great movies, and we do go a little bit more in depth with them
Hmm.
on that episode, which will release next week, I think.
Yep.
Um, I will do two as well, and the only reason I'm doing that is because they're in the same. They're one is the sequel to the other.
Okay.
I think I talked about this on the podcast previously. I'm trying to do a new movie every day in 2021. So far, so good. I'm actually kind of above. I've watched
Really?
27. Yeah, I've watched
Holy
27
shit.
movies this year, and it's the 26th day of the month. So, doing pretty good. Anyway, that said, I've been clearing out my watch list a lot. Finally making some progress, and I've had these like direct to video type movies in there, these action movies that I've been meaning to watch, and I just never have. And I finally got around to it. So the first one is called The Debt Collector. This is high class B movie cheese. It's our Scott Atkins, who is kind of a B movie king here recently, martial artist, and he plays a debt collector essentially who goes and gets money from people that owe it to this guy Tommy, who's a loan shark, and it's part like action movie, part like buddy comedy between him and his partner in this film. And it's just like I said, it's just high grade cheese. It's very very good at what it's trying to be, which is like a direct to DVD action movie. I think it's a Netflix film. I'm not 100% that it is, but I know it is on Netflix. That's where I watched it. The sequel is also on there, The Debt Collector 2, also known as Debt Collectors. Like I said, it's a direct sequel. It takes place several months after the first movie. They're both like good bad movies in a way, if that makes sense. Like I said, they're not, don't go in with high expectations, but if you just want to watch a good movie that's low on plot, high on action, you pick the right ones.
Right on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah. So that's this week's episode, I think. It
Dope.
was a little longer than I think we intended for it to be.
Yeah. I mean, edited down. It probably still end up being a little bit shorter than our typical fare, but still, I feel like it was, very high energy. We matched the energy of the trailer.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so, so that's good at least. But hopefully we did not bore your ears off, dear listeners.
yeah.
Also, if you're listening to the podcast for the first time, which I have a feeling that might be the case, or you're a new listener, thank you so much for subscribing. I've been going back and forth with Ted on this almost on a daily basis. I've been typically I don't check our download numbers maybe once a week, if that. Like I'll check them when I go to upload the week's episode. But I've been checking them a couple times because they are going up for no reason that I can
Yeah,
think of.
because the episodes aren't getting better. I don't understand.
Yeah, Ted and I were just like fucking like we're kind of I mean nervous and excited, but mostly just shock and awe. Like that's what we
Yeah.
are right now because we're like we, I mean we're not complaining. We're definitely not doing that.
No, it's cool. It's just kind of surreal, I think.
For sure. Yeah.
For two mediocre bums to, a couple of jabronis to have people that want to listen to them talk about dumb shit is kind of weird and cool. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I just want to echo what David said. Thank you all for tuning in. Um, Podcasting is easy to do in a way because it's not super difficult to just talk about things that you enjoy,
Mhm.
but it's also kind of hard because there's so many other jabronis that are doing the same thing as you. So the fact that you find us interesting enough or funny enough, or even you can mock us for 60 minutes or 90 minutes a week, that's cool because you still share part of your lives with us, which is kind of weird and kind of cool and kind of soft for me to even say, but
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. We I'll echo back all that. And we 100% appreciate your listenership, and
Yeah.
it feels nice to be liked,
Yeah,
and
it's a nice change.
yeah, we've been plugging hard at this for quite a while now, and it's cool to see improvements on that
Yeah,
end.
positive results for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Like David said, you can subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Give us a like or leave a rating or review where applicable. Usually, Apple Podcasts, I think, is kind of the main one people can leave
Yeah,
ratings and reviews on. We
Stitcher,
ask that you give us
thanks.
either a 1-star or a 5-star. There is none of this middle of the road bullshit. You commit to one or the other.
Hmm.
Find us on Facebook and different social medias by searching out Geek Garage Podcast. You can find our Facebook group, Fans of the Geek Garage Podcast. That is our most active, I would say, probably
For sure.
means of social media. We do a lot of polls and things on there, a lot of fun stuff and discussions that I personally don't use Facebook, but I know David sends me over a lot of info from it, and
Hmm.
it looks like a lot of people have a good time over there. We have a Patreon. You do not have to feel obligated to donate to it. I do not donate to it because that would make no sense. But if you want to, you can search us out on Patreon. Tiers start at what, $2,
$2. Yep,
$2 to
$2.
$5, I think, David.
Yep.
So for not a lot of money, you can support us doing not a lot of anything good either. So it works out. Um,
Now there is a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on. The recording, speaking into the mic, is the proverbial tip of the iceberg. So
right.
there's a lot of background business that goes on that y'all don't see. Not trying to like shove it in your face or make you feel bad about it. Just saying like podcasting is fun, but it's
This shit
also
ain't free.
yeah, it is not free.
Yeah.
So
So if you feel feeling generous, throw us over a quick donation. You do get some perks. It's not like you're just giving us money for the same shit everybody else gets.
yep.
You do get some perks, and hopefully, if coronavirus ever decides to fuck off, we'll add some additional perks for people. If and when we are ever able to like go to conventions again.
Hmm.
We can add some different perks for people that come see us at conventions, which is a big ask, but if you're going to be there anyway, swing by. Don't come just to see us. We're two jabronis, but if you're going to be at a convention that we're at, come say hi and be like, hey, I donate money to you, and we'll be like, sucker, in real life. But it's just on a podcast. But no, seriously, there are some pretty cool perks, buttons and stickers, sets, and additional episodes when we're asked enough to record them. So
Yeah,
but yeah,
sure.
that's the spiel. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. Big episode next week about zombies, our Informal Paranormal series. That's all I got. David, tell everybody goodbye.
Goodbye, and be kind, stay geeky, and eat lots of cheesecake. See ya.
Peace.